Hello and welcome to the Renew Europe webinar on how biowaste
Alle
can
sammen, og
fuel the
velkommen
Green
til
Deal.
webinaret med bioaffald og Green Deal.
Okay.
Jeg hedder Claudia Gamon. Jeg er parlamentsmedlem fra Den Grønne i parlamentet. Jeg er fra Østrig, og jeg er ordstyrer i dag. Hurtig information. Jeg har lavet lidt planlægning, og jeg vil gerne takke
the wonderful advisors in our offices and in the Renew Europe group for their work on this topic. This will be an interactive debate. So after the presentations from our speakers, we will take questions. So please make use of the questions and answers tool. You have this on the right side next to the program where it says program. You can write in your questions. I will collect them. You can write in your questions through the entire debate. I'll collect them and pass them on to the participants later on. Generally, our topic today is about what resource efficiency and circular economy actually means in practice. This is a topic that keeps us on our toes in the parliament at this moment. And tonight will be about what we need to do in order to make more out of the biowaste in the European Union. And we can answer or try to answer the question as to how far the potential really goes with this topic. This event will shine a light on the way circular economy, biowaste and biogas can contribute to the EU reaching the Green Deal goals. And I would like to first give the floor to my colleague, Asger Christensen, for an introduction from his point of view. And then I will continue on to the panel's participants and introduce them after Asger has spoken. He is first and foremost a farmer, but also a politician and member of the European Parliament, and is very interested in how agriculture can contribute to the green transition. So, Asger, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claudia. And now I'll speak on my mother tongue.
Tak, Claudia. Welcome to this webinar, From Waste to Resource. I would have preferred to meet you all face-to-face, but, well, that provides a better debate and discussion for facing the task that we do, but that's unfortunately impossible during these times. We'll have to do that another time, and it's, after all, better to meet online than not meeting at all. The process from biowaste to any other useful material, for example, biogas, has had my interest for a long time, even before I was elected for the European Parliament. I've actually worked with biogas in my local area for 10 years, where we've tried to have a biogas facility running, and we almost reached a target, but then the political winds turned in the local municipality and didn't want this biogas facility at the community. It's good for the climate, the environment, to transform our biowaste from society and agriculture to gas and nutrients. I think most people would agree, and it is just good common sense that we utilize our waste products to renewable energy sources. Therefore, I'm very happy that we can meet here today and hear the different experts and their input regarding biowaste and biogas on the agenda. I see an enormous potential in transforming waste to biogas. Biogas can be used from everything from heating up regular households to heavy transport fuel. And biogas is green and sustainable. There are many interesting technologies for this. For example, pyrolysis, methane gas, biodiesel, and sky clean biofuels for airplanes, and many others. and I'm very interested in hearing about those. However, I will let the speakers go into details with these different technologies. Biogas is already used actively in many places and for many purposes. For example, Sønderborg in Denmark, with about 30,000 inhabitants, they have decided to be CO2 neutral in 2029. And they already have made a transformation into biogas in the bus system and for their transportation of waste on trucks. And they have just opened a very large biogas facility for that purpose. And I think that could be the future in many places in Europe and, in fact, globally. As a local politician and president of a local biogas company, I've many times experienced that everybody wants the green transition, but not in my backyard. So there we have a challenge we have to face mutually. I see a huge potential in biogas, and I think it will play a central role in the green transition. It could also help bring down the CO2 and methane burden from farming and agriculture, and I think the potential is so great that we should have a biogas strategy on a EU level if we talk about a green strategy. With those words, once again, welcome to a very interesting webinar this afternoon, and I now give the floor to Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asger. Change the channel. Okay, so just so that everybody knows how this will be going, we will have presentation now from our panel participants. They will be about 10 to 12 minutes long. I will try to keep the time and make you aware if you're more or less at about 10 minutes because we really want to have some time left for the debate, which I believe will be very interesting. So today we have some very interesting speakers that I would like to introduce now to you. We have Dan Peters here, Director of Energy Sustainability and Infrastructure at Guidehouse Consultancy and a contributor to the Gas for Climate Consortium, who will be talking about trends in bioenergy from biowaste. And Almut Reichel, she is a sustainable resource use and waste expert from the European Environment Agency, who will talk about biowaste management in Europe, challenges and opportunities. We have Ole Velblund, CEO of Nature Energy, a Danish energy company specializing in biogas from biowaste. We'll talk about the practical use of biowaste and the potential of bioenergy production from waste. We have Lasse Usendal, a professor from the University of Aalborg in Denmark, who will talk about the perspectives on sustainable fuel for the transport sector, in particular in aviation, maritime, and heavy vehicles. And we have Florian Marco, policy advisor at the Austrian Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation, and Technology. It's a big ministry. He will talk about biowaste valorization and the national approach in Austria for biogas in energy and climate strategies. So as you can see, we have a very interesting panel today. And I would like to start with Dan Peters. If he can start by sharing his screen. Welcome to this debate. And I will give you the floor and let you know when you're at about 10 minutes so that you know where the time is at.
Thank you very much. I hope people can hear me well and can see my screen. Great. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dan Peters. I work at Guidehouse, previously known as Navigant, therefore known as Ecofys, a consultancy firm, and we have been supporting a consortium called the Gas for Climate Consortium. The Gas for Climate Consortium is a group of gas infrastructure companies from various European countries, as well as the European Biogas Association and the Italian Biogas Association. The group came together in 2017 because they realized that in a net zero emissions energy system, it would be important to analyze, okay, what would be the role and the value of gas and gas infrastructure. We performed a number of energy system analysis studies for the group, and we identified what the future role and value could be. So we identified a number of sweet spots for biomethane as well as hydrogen. My presentation obviously today focuses on hydrogen, but just a quick snapshot here. I won't take too long for this one, but basically this is an overview of one of the studies that we did. Looking from left to right, we see a very large scale-up potential for biomethane as well as hydrogen. And these renewable and low carbon gases can be used in a range of energy demand sectors, buildings, industry, power, and heavy industry, leading to an overall societal value of 200 billion euro annually, compared to a counterfactual scenario in which gas and gas infrastructure would be phased out going forward. So what I'd like to take from this is that there is a role for biogas, biomethane in the future energy system, and there is a potential for scale up. Biogas, biomethane can be produced from a number of feedstocks through a number of technologies. The anaerobic digestion that is currently used across the European countryside, as well as gasification, which is not a new technology, but it's not yet commercially deployed at scale to produce biomethane, but it could be a very valuable technology to use also woody residues, forestry residues in producing biomethane going forward. One of the studies that we did a kind of bottom-up potential analysis in terms of biomethane from both technologies, so both the agricultural feedstocks as well as the woody feedstocks. And we came to a total potential of just over 1,000 terawatt hours, which equals 95 billion cubic meters. Just to give you the perspective, today Europe uses about 450 BCM of natural gas per year. You see on this slide a breakdown of that potential. So you see that there is a number of residues, agricultural residues, woody residues, forestry residues, but also the concept of sequential cropping. So this is basically using land-based crops, but not as main crops, has been debated quite intensely in the biomethane sustainability discussion. So this is using basically winter cropping, so winter cover cropping as a feedstock. And we're currently in a project for DG Energy pilot testing this concept in France with a group of farmers there. So a large potential of biomethane. Biomethane has the ability to reduce emissions both in energy and agriculture. In agriculture, it can lead to reduction in methane emissions. Of course, in the transport sector, in the energy sector, it can lead to replacement of short carbon cycle, fossil-based emissions by long carbon cycle, biogenic CO2 emissions. Biomethane has also the ability to create negative emissions, so bioenergy CCS, by capturing carbon in agricultural soils through soil carbon accumulation. So basically, if you would plow less intensely, so low tillage, then carbon stays in soils. There's also the concept of creating negative emissions in a different way, and that is basically adding biomethane in steam methane reformers or autothermal reformers to produce hydrogen from a an energy efficiency perspective, that is maybe not the optimal solution, because you would first produce biomethane, and you could say, okay, there's sufficiently valuable uses for biomethane as biomethane in the system. However, I see this more as a long-term solution. So towards 2050, when blue hydrogen may be phased out, adding biomethane in SMR ATR units can still prolong the lifetime of these units and create valuable negative emissions. So when the CO2 price would be above 100 euro per ton after 2040, this could definitely be a valuable option. What I see, and these graphs are based on data by European Biogas Association and Gas Infrastructure Europe. I see the share of biowaste increasing in total biomethane production, both in terms of the total kind of production, as well as the total plants, the biomethane installations that use biowaste as a main feedstock. So that's definitely a trend, a very clear trend in biomethane production across Europe. I also see that, and basically the right-hand graph here shows that the largest biomethane plants use bio and municipal waste, agricultural residues. So among the largest plants in size are plants that use bio-waste. So definitely bio-waste is seems to have is not just growing in size, it's also the on a per installation level, we see that the big installations that often also produce at a cheaper, at a lower cost, are fueled with bio-waste. And on the left-hand graph here, we see basically a breakdown of the substrates used in biomethane production. So, ranging from sewage sludge, industrial waste, also still a chunk of dedicated energy crops. Today, mainly main crops, but as I just said, in the future, there is the ability to replace this by winter cover crops. So a range of agricultural and agricultural residues. As I also said, in the future, there is an ability to also use woody forestry residues for biomethane production through that other production technology, the thermal gasification route. So then how to scale up biomethane in Europe? So our analysis shows a potential already by 2030 to scale up biomethane to 35 BCM from the currently 2 BCM grid-bound biomethane. Part of this is based on producing biomethane from biogas, so taking out the CO2 and really upgrading that biogas to biomethane. Also, partly we see the possibility for quite a large scale increase in new anaerobic digesters, with also quite a large scale per unit size. And we'll hear more about that probably by the CEO of Nature Energy later this meeting, in terms of building large scale biomethane plants. I also see the ability already before 2030 to build several large scale gasification plants. The technology is there. It's just quite a large capital investments that is required. So quite a large risk, and these risks have to be reduced. And I think, for example, the EU Innovation Fund could play an important role in scaling up also that technology. Maybe to close. So this seems kind of a complicated slide. Basically, what I want to say here is that on the technology side, both gasification and digestion, further improvements are possible. Further economies of scale are possible. On the feedstock side, I see an increased uptake of biowaste. Also, as I said, there is an ability to use sustainable winter cover crops. More research is needed on that. We are doing that, so you'll hear more about us on that one hopefully later. I would like to leave it here for now. Thank you so much for listening, and very glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an interesting view also into the very detailed technical side. I believe that this is also a good way to continue with Almod Reichel. She is an expert from the European Environment Agency, and I would like to give you the floor to continue.
Thank you very much, Claudia. I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. I'm not so familiar with Zoom, so right now.
Feel free to take your time and just keep talking while we're waiting.
I can't find the file actually. I'm really sorry.
Are you using a German version? There should be a button that says Inhalt teilen somewhere.
No, I use the English version. It says select a window, basic advanced files, but then it doesn't show me the screen
It should be share screen, I think.
Yeah. I have clicked on share screen, but it doesn't show me the file I want to show. It's a bit strange.
Okay.
Do you
should
have
we?
Yes. Could you? I don't know how to solve this.
Maybe we can take Mr. Wellblund first, and in the meantime, the moderator will work with you on the chat to solve this problem, if that's okay for you.
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Thank you, Ms. Reichel. So,
okay. So now the pressure.
We will start with Mr. Wellblund. Yeah, I'm sorry to jump this on you, but if you would be so kind to start your presentation, that would be great. You're talking about the practical use of biowaste and the potential of bioenergy. You have about 10 to 12 minutes, and we're very excited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do you see my presentation now?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for attending this webinar. I'm very excited to be here, and I will tell you a little bit about what we have been doing here in Nature Energy over the past years. So I think that biogas or biomethane is really a key driver for all this green transition, not only in the energy sector but also more widely in terms of circular economy, in terms of reuse of nutrients and so forth. But first of all, I have this where I state that we have a natural given resource where we can produce green energy, and we all know, learned by the electricity world, that we have sun and wind that can produce power. But I think that as important as this, we have bio-waste or organic waste that we can use, that we produce every year in terms of our food production, national, global, that we have this organic waste that we have to reuse. That is a given source of energy that we know that comes every year. And with we can use that in our biogas plants, and we can strengthen the recirculation while we're creating CO2 neutral energy out of organic waste or biological waste. So I think that's something that people tend to forget, that we actually have a really big source here that can where we can reuse the organic waste, and we are actually also in the same time help the climate and environment that what we are doing here. Nature Energy, we are still a small company with between 250 and 300 employees, and we inject all the gas we produce into the gas grid in Denmark, and we account for between 30% and 50% of the gas injected to the grid. And in Denmark, we already have in the gas grid in Denmark, 20% of all gas are biomethane. So I think we have reached quite a high level of this greenification of the gas grid in Denmark. We are treating about 700 suppliers to our biogas plant, which most of them are from farmers with agricultural waste that we take into the biogas plants. Our company have 3 areas of business. One is production of biogas. The other one is gas to transport, and then we have also sales of bio certificates as a part of our business. We are known as one of the world's largest producers of biogas, and we have done that in quite a short time frame, in about 5 years, where we have built 11 large-scale biogas plants located in Denmark. We also operating plants in France and in UK. And in 2020, we are converting around 5 million tons of biomass in our biogas plants, and we produce of that 200 million cubic meters biomethane from this and upgraded biomethane. And that will be enough to keep about 12,000 trucks running and 50,000 kilometers a year on the road. So it's quite significant what we can do here, and I think that we just should do more than what we have done already. We also looking to go international, and actually at the moment we have already been granted subsidies on 6 plants in France, and we also have a couple of plants that we plan to build in Northern America. And when we look at the opportunities of the organic waste that we see around in the world, and the size of our biogas plants to really bring it to a professional and industrial scale, we expect that we, in our size of biogas plants, there will be room for about 2,000 biogas plants in North America, 2,000 in Europe, and 7,000 in Asia. So there's a lot of room for really big scale biogas plants to take all the waste streams that we see in the society. When we look at the biogas plants in itself, some of you are probably quite familiar with this figure here, and what we take into the biogas plants, we take waste from households and businesses. We take all, for instance, we take all the organic waste from supermarkets in Denmark in our biogas plants. We take, of course, a lot of slurry and residues from agriculture. We also take cover crops in our plants, and not very much of energy crops. We actually try to avoid that. We also put in a lot of deep litter from the farmers, which has been very new that we do that. We are planning to take in straw and other feedstocks, and I think that can even produce more biogas from taking straw in. That's a very big source of feedstock that we can take there. What I usually say that we have to ask 3 questions about biomass. The one is, do we think that there are biomasses enough to really make biogas significant in the European scene? And what also Dean Peters showed that there is potential of that. There's a lot of organic waste that we can take into the biogas plant, and ideally we should have a biogas plant for every 50 kilometers and take waste from in a circle of 25 kilometers from there, really to take all this bio waste and organic waste into the biogas plant and transform that to green gas and reuse the nutrients from this organic waste. So we made an investigation with the universities in Denmark, and we also came to the same conclusion as Dean Peters says, that that's really enough to really could bring biogas to a situation where it counts for almost 20% of all the energy consumption in Denmark. The other question is, can we do it cheap enough? Because today we get subsidies from the state on our biogas production, and we really think that we should find a way where we could we should try to lower this significantly over the coming years. So that's the reason why we have decided to do this in a professional way, where we have big scale plants. We have our own lab. We have biochemists, biologists, and engineers, process engineers in our central office, and then we have more the operational people at the biogas plant. So we really try to make a model that will be scalable. But we have to learn a lot more about what is happening inside the tanks you see in the middle of the figure, because actually people know very little about what is happening in the tanks, and we can really utilize the feedstock much more than we do today, and also make it more sophisticated when we take out the natural fertilizers that you see, which is one of the streams out of the biogas plant. We should separate things and make sure that we can use these things. And of course, the gas is one of the other outputs of this, and we have to utilize that to different usages. And it's, of course, you can use, when you go on the gas grid, you can use it for whatever you think is most valuable. And at the first place, we can use it for heating and a lot of things that we also expect to be electrified in the future. But in the first place, you can actually lower the cost of electrification by using biogas, and then move biogas more in the direction of heavy transport, like heavy duty trucks, ships, airplanes, and so forth. So we get jet fuels and things like that. It's easy to do that out of biogas, because we just click into the already existing systems, what people have of plants to produce jet fuel and so on, because the only difference from our gas is that it's green instead of black. What is important also, I think I should finish soon here. I think that on this figure, I'll just please take the attention to the windmills in the center, because when we produce biogas, we also produce a CO2 stream, and the CO2 is the most clean CO2, and is the most cheap CO2 to combine with hydrogen from windmills power production, where you get the hydrogen. So the combination of biogas together with windmill or sun farms is actually excellent, and you can more or less double the production of biomethane on the plants that we have. So remember, we have this organic waste stream that we get every year, and we can use this for biomethane, but also to recirculate the nutrients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I hope that Arnold Reichel has managed to find the screen sharing button. I believe she has.
Well, thank you, Claudia. I had to, well, let's see if it works now. I think yes, this looks much better. I couldn't test it during while the other presentation was on. Can you see my slide now?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, so I will share this now. Okay, biowaste in Europe. Yes, we already have heard it. Biowaste is actually a key waste stream with a high potential for contributing to to a more circular economy in Europe. And biowaste consists of both food waste and park and garden waste. I will just give a quick introduction about biowaste, and then I will say something on food waste, on biowaste management in Europe, and then on biodegradable and compostable plastics. Biowaste is actually what we have done in our study is to focus on biowaste from households, offices, restaurants, wholesale, canteens, and so on. But we have not included biowaste or comparable waste from food processing. The reason is that we have looked for that waste that is covered by the Waste Framework Directive, because the revised Waste Framework Directive agreed in 2018 acknowledges the potential of biowaste and has introduced a number of provisions that will increase the separate collection of biowaste, because there is an obligation for all member states now to collect biowaste and ensure recycling at source by 2023. And there is also recycling targets for municipal waste. Biowaste is part of the municipal waste. And these recycling targets of 65% of recycling by 2035 will not be attainable without also collecting and managing biowaste in a good way. And finally, the Waste Framework Directive introduced an obligation for member states to monitor their food waste with a view to the Sustainable Development Goal to halve food waste by 2030. The biowaste in municipal waste, which we have looked into, makes up around 1/3 of all municipal waste in Europe. And more than half of that biowaste currently goes into the mixed municipal waste and finally ends up either on landfills or in waste incineration. And less than half is currently collected separately. Food waste. About 60% of the biowaste is actually food waste. And food waste should be, in the first place, be prevented as far as possible, because reducing food waste can actually reduce the demand for food and can decrease all the accumulated environmental impacts of producing, processing, and transporting the food. And this figure shows an interpretation of the waste hierarchy for food, and it therefore places prevention of food at the top, followed by reduce, for example, to redistribute food to needy people or also use it as animal feed. And only after that comes recycling, and of course disposing it off is the last resort, which we should avoid as much as possible. Food waste is generated by all sectors, and more than half of that comes from households, and from processing is the second, and then production, food service, and wholesale and retail are also important sources of that. Some countries have already very well developed systems of collecting their biowaste separately, and they manage to capture a high share of the generated biowaste within municipal waste. But others are at a very low separate collection rate still. So these countries will have to speed up and to introduce separate collection and build up biowaste management infrastructure. But even in countries with established separate collection systems, there is still a considerable share of biowaste that still ends up in the residual waste bin. That means that, we have calculated that around 50 million tons of biowaste is currently ending up in the residual waste, so there is a big potential to tap into. When introducing separate collection and treatment of biowaste, next to building infrastructure and for the management and collection, it's also very important to create good quality outputs. And one of these options is to introduce national quality standards and to develop quality management systems, because such systems can help to build trust and assure the quality of the compost and digestates. And they can open up new markets for those products, for example, in growing media. We found that around of the 39 countries we have surveyed, around 18 of those already have national standards, quality standards for compost and digestate quality. And in 12 of those countries, a quality management system exists. But there is still room for improving this in many of the countries. And this is definitely a part of a system to improve biowaste management and turning it into useful products. High quality compost and digestates can open up new markets. And for example, in Flanders, in Ireland and the Netherlands, compost is already used not only in agriculture and landscaping, but also in growing media. But there's also opportunities to turn biowaste into new products. And we already have heard from the previous speakers that there is options, for example, as gasification. There is a number of opportunities that for higher quality products from biowaste, which are currently researched or are in a state of testing. Most of these are tested for more, like, let's say, types of biowaste which are not coming from municipal sources, but for example from food processing, because they are more clean, let's say. For example, for use of animal feed and creating insect protein, you need quite good quality biowaste. But many of these technologies still need further development and scaling up. And so there is indeed room for and the need for further research here and also investment. Oh. And you can find our report on our website for more details. So I invite you to look into that after this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you very much for sticking to the time. So I will continue with Lasse Usendal. Yes, he's already here. So I invite you to take the floor and start your presentation if you have one. We're all very excited. Thank you very much. I don't think we hear you very well.
I had my microphone.
Now works perfectly.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is the visual part okay?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I would like to talk about biofuels, looking at it maybe from the transport perspective, and a few considerations on how to make the green transition. I having listened to the nice presentations preceding me, I think I'll probably be repeating a few things, but hopefully also adding something to the discussion. So very brief overview of transport sector and green transition, and then talk about the role of the biofuels, and then finish with some final points. So what we see here is the distribution of energy across the different fuel types that are used in the energy sector. So what we can see is that starting from the bottom, we have gasoline, which is mostly used in the light duty transport sector. Then we have diesel, the purple big chunk in the middle, which sort of shared between the light and the heavy duty. And then we go into a more diverse range of fuels that are only used in the heavy duty sector, such as kerosene and bunker fuels and things like that. So it's really, so when we talk about the light duty sector, it's quite uniform, also in terms of technologies. When we go towards the heavy transport, it's rather more diverse. What we see in the pie chart on the right is the same thing, except expressed as CO2 emissions and their shares. So what we see is that the four major contributors on the heavy transport side, shipping, land transport, and aviation, almost make up about 50% of the total share. But what we also see is on the right-hand side, we have a single very large fraction that comes from light-duty traffic. And this is really also the way we talk about making the transition into sustainable transport. We split between heavy and light. And so what we really are talking about now in the public debate is really electrification. And Ole had a little bit on it, and I'll touch on it a little more just to explain what we're talking about. Is for the light traffic sector, it's direct electrification, so electrical vehicles, either battery electric or plug-in hybrids that we expect to roll out, and there are national targets for the number of cars on the roads by a certain time. What is quite obvious is that there is a major bottleneck in terms of the availability of materials for the batteries. So this is really what we are up against in the rollout on the light sector. In the heavy traffic sector, we talk about indirect electrification through what's known as power to X. So we use renewable electricity to electrolyze water to produce a hydrogen, and then we have a carbon source or a nitrogen source and mix them, synthesize with hydrogen to produce some kind of a fuel. Now, major bottleneck here is, of course, that this needs, in order for a complete rollout, huge infrastructure investments and capacity building. So there is also a time gap in this. So we have sort of two different ways of looking at the transport sector. And the question really is, so where or even does biofuel fit into this? And just to quickly define biofuels in the context of sustainability. So obviously we're talking about non-food biofuels, so residue-derived fuels, biowaste, obvious source of these. In the Renewable Energy Directive version 2, these are all the different sources are listed and the rules for the double counting. So it's quite well defined what we can do. Now the previous speakers have been focusing a bit on gas. I probably take a wider perspective and be technology agnostic and talk about both the gases, so either biomethane from gasification or biogas, as we heard about before, from anaerobic digestion. So that would be the gaseous routes. And then the alternative or the supplement is really the liquid fuels. So the transport sector today is very much based on liquid fuels, and there are many ways and technologies that you can actually arrive at those. You can do from the gasification pathways, you can do synthesis to produce either fuels directly or crudes that you can refine. There are what's called liquefaction technologies that are being rolled out now in demonstration scale, where you can produce a full range of synthetic hydrocarbons, so pretty much what we have today, except sustainable. There are also the vegetable oil based alternatives. Some of them are included in the RED II, for example, from used cooking oil. And we see these are this is sort of like the fast track, for example, to aviation fuel, because what you get is paraffinics out of that. So there are many, many ways to make these fuels, and they have all pluses and minuses in their book, but all of them potentially could contribute to the green transition. So the postulate is really, and I think in this forum it's maybe not so controversial, that biofuels really do have a major role to play in the deployment of sustainability, both in the near and also in the medium term, and you could even say in the long term. But it's also a postulate that they can be cost effective with development. This is absolutely within reach. And also that biofuels, in a way that the electrification pathways are not, biofuels are definitely key enablers for a whole range of agricultural business development and circular economy. The big question is, and for example, in Denmark, we talk about this a lot, biofuels, are they even sustainable? Can they be? And the short answer, definitely on the advanced fuels for sure. And what you can see here is also a little bit what we heard before from Nature Energy, that some of these have actually the potential to be either carbon negative or to be linked to renewable electricity and boosting the fuel production. So here we have, again, the residues, so either from agriculture or from urban activities, that definitely show this potential. Now, the bigger question, as we heard just before, is that because biofuels integrate with the whole ecosystem in a way that other types of fuels don't, sustainability becomes a more complex thing. And so you have to address all kinds of environmental, social, economic aspects to actually identify whether biofuels are sustainable. But again, if you do this right, yes, biofuels are definitely sustainable, and they are very deployable. For the agricultural sector, obviously, various residues from farming, husbandry, etc., are the sources that would then go into this. So the advanced biofuels are more than just fuels. They're also fuels, and they are sustainable, but they're also key enablers for a number of other things. One is that they basically tap into all of the agendas, circular economy, the efficiency, the food, water, energy nexus. They tap into the whole carbon dioxide issue, both in terms of obtaining neutrality, but certainly also in terms of reducing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So it's more than just a fuel. In terms of the circular economy, whereas we struggle to keep as much of our products within the loop, so to speak, so we don't have the residual waste, it's very hard for society not to have certain residual waste streams, and those are the ones that we tap into in order to bring them back into the loop. And when we think about residuals or residues, it's stuff that comes from the agriculture, as mentioned, but it's certainly also bio-waste in general, from food waste, from municipal solid waste, and also from sewage sludge, for example. So there are many ways many sources of this. Apart from valorizing all the organics, either as energy or something else, it's also extremely important, we heard before, to be observant of fertilizer aspects, for example, and mainly the phosphorus, but also nitrogen, to be able to bring that back into the loop, and if possible to do so without reintroducing contaminants such as microplastics, etc. The value chain or the value pyramid in bioeconomy looks like this. We have all the high value stuff like pharma, food and feed at the top, low volume, high value, and then at the bottom we have the low value, high volume. And this is really where we are when we talk about energy. But the thing about the bioenergy is, of course, it facilitates also business creation in the top part of the pyramid, because it creates an offtake for the biowaste that are generated from this activity. In terms of carbon efficiency, I try to keep this technology agnostic. So it's essentially the story that if you have an effective bioconversion technology, you are able to do something which is close to being carbon neutral. There are some externals that might affect that to produce whatever biofuel. And there are nice sector coupling potentials, for example, to couple to district heating, to utilize also the heat produced, and so on. The other potential that we have is to link up to the renewable electricity grid through electrolysis and to boost the production of biofuels by renewable hydrogen. And you can do that either by mixing or integrating the hydrogen directly into your conversion technology, or you can utilize the CO2, which is a byproduct from almost all bioconversion technologies, to make additional fuels. You can even link up to other sources of CO2, so it becomes a more generic thing. And if you don't want to make the fuels, it's rather simple to then say, okay, we will sequester the CO2, and then what we are doing is running a carbon negative operation, which also has quite potential. Now, the previous speakers were talking a lot about, so it was on gases. I tend to have the viewpoint that if we really want to do this fast and efficient, what we should be doing is to make liquid fuels, and all the pathways that we've talked about here lend themselves to further synthesis, so you can end up with a liquid fuel. And if we make it in a way that it's a drop-in fuel, it basically means that we can roll it out in a both smooth, expedient, and also just way that consumers don't need to go and invest in new infrastructure because they can reuse what they have. And this also enables things like regional ownership, for example, that local biogas to biomethanol, for example, production using the local can be distributed using local fuel infrastructure, and that would then through this sort of regional ownership allow us to implement and scale up from smaller units to something that is bigger. And this also means that using the light duty transport sector as leverage for this could be a way to expedite the transition. So instead of waiting until we're ready to go all in on the heavy transport sector, then use the light duty to build up capacity, to learn, to become better, to improve efficiencies, lower costs, and then go for the larger, the heavy end. In terms of potentials and scales, I don't have as many details as some of the previous speakers, but just suffice it to say that across the different types of residues we have actually quite significant amounts that we can produce fuels in the million barrel per day range. Just off the top of my head, I think Europe is using something like 10 to 11 million barrels per day. So we're in the range, and that we can also do it quite cost effectively. So reaching production costs that are not, several orders of magnitude above what we have today. Now, in order to reach this, yes, I'm wrapping up. So in order to reach that, what we have to do, of course, is to make sure that it pays to be green. So to create a market pull on green fuels by penalizing, I know it's not a nice word, but penalizing CO2. Also to work, for example, with regulations for car manufacturers that incentivize their ability to handle green fuels. Well, yeah, let me just, so you can, I'm sure these will be distributed, but just to say, well, so the biofuels really link a lot of things together that are drivers in the European transition, and basically fill some of the gaps that are left by this electrical perspective on the world. So with that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. This has been very valuable, also complementary information to the things that we heard before. I think we're getting a really good picture now of the topic. So before I give the floor to our last presenter here, Florent Marco, I would like to remind those watching the live stream to put in their questions if they have any in the Q&A tool, so that I can pass them on to the panel after the last presentation. So now I would like to give the floor to Florent Marco.
Thank you for the kind introduction, thank you for the kind words, and also thank you for the previous presenters. I think I'm going to also show you and at least replicate some of your thoughts, but I'm going to be quick at the beginning about the basics. So just see that everybody's seeing now my presentation. Everybody seeing it?
Yes, it works just fine.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So my name is Florian Marco. I'm working for the DG Climate and Energy by the Ministry for Climate Action of Austria. And I want to give you a short insight about the implementation of policies regarding biogas in energy and climate strategies. And it's quite important also that you see how we try to combine the question of also of circular economy and integration in energy systems. Yeah. As always, already put out by the previous speakers, the Green Deal in order to achieve carbon neutrality 2050 is not only working with an all-electric scenario. Otherwise, renewable molecules are key to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. Yeah, and also in the long-term strategy of the European Commission, which was great work, and the modulation of the different scenarios, especially the 1.5 degree scenarios, shows that overall renewable gases have their share of about, on average, of 35%, and adding on top also renewable fuels and also power-to-X systems, adding around 40% of renewable molecules in the overall final energy demand and the energy consumption. So just basic message, all electric is another scenario which is achievable. So, and especially for the hard to abate sectors, especially also the industrial applications which need gas as also a feedstock. Yeah. So the government program of Austria at the moment has not only the target of getting climate neutral, but it's we are aiming to get carbon neutral and climate neutral in 2040. So 10 years before the EU is planning to do that, and it means 19 years to go, 19 challenging years, when so also our ambition needs to raise. So in 2030, we are already targeting on hitting on 100% renewable electricity, yeah, on balance. What is also in this case a very important point then for biogas and biomethane, because intermittent energy carriers, intermittent energy production, yeah, has to be balanced also with flexibilities, which could possibly be coming from gas power plants fired with biomethane. Yeah. The overall energy share, the renewable energy share should be around 46 to 50% in 2030, and a very important target now, first time written in the government program of Austria, is an explicit target for renewable gas production in 2030. And how are we going to reach that, and how we're trying to reach that, I'm going to show you. So in all topics also regarding biogas, we should have always to have a bioeconomy in mind. And that's why we also have the Austrian bioeconomy strategy already adopted 1 year ago, and which it identified fields of action and addressed those fields of action. So also measures are going to be implemented in the need of changing consumption. Yeah. Also new raw materials from waste residues and byproducts have to be accounted, and also to be produced from new products. And this is also, of course, the cross section to the biogas production and consumption. Further efficiency in processing has to be addressed, because all feedstocks, and especially renewable feedstocks, have to be handled in a careful way and in the most carbon efficient way. Yeah. And there's ongoing work right now on the measures related to that, and hopefully we will be tabled soon. Important is that in all the use aspects of renewable feedstocks, the cascading use is in the focus. Yeah. The renewable gas states, at least the state of play of renewable gas in Austria, is at biomethane injection level quite, a low one. Yeah, only 0.2% of renewable gas is actually 0.2% of the overall gas consumption is injected in in the grid or by biomethane. But in order to reach those 5 terawatt hours, which would be regarding to 90 terawatt hours, around 5.6% of renewable gases in 2030, we have now figured out several strategies how to achieve this goal. First of all, we are going to try to integrate existing biogas power plants, which are currently now using biogas for power production and heat production. We have got around 290 active right now in Austria, and most of them are small scale, within small scale capacities. Yeah. And a second challenge is that most of the feedstocks they are currently using is they are like energy crops with especially corn and wheat. Yeah. And so it's now a strategy to integrate most of the highest capacities into the national gas grids, calling that greening the gas. Yeah. And as you see, it's on the map of Austria, the most, so the biogas power plants with the most capacities are also in the vicinities of distribution networks of gas grids. That's very important, and that was a very good sign, because also in these regions, these regional aspects has most of the agricultural production potential. We've got also most of this potential in Eastern, in Upper Austria, Lower Austria, but also in Vorarlberg is quite a good potential, because also the gas grid is there situated in favorable conditions to inject the biomethane into the gas grid. Yeah, and what is the feedstock potential in order to achieve that? Several studies pointed out that the very important feedstock we should address, and we are now planning to address, is of course biowaste, yeah, and also manure from agriculture. Also, especially in case of manure. Why? Because we have to also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and especially the methane emissions from the agricultural sector. Yeah, and studies show us potential to 2030 around 8 to 7 terawatt hours. And on the right hand side, you see a graph how we calculated we could actually reach the target of 5 terawatt hours. And as you see, the dark green bars, those are the existing biogas plants which should be shifted. So at last, around 50% of the capacities installed right now could be shifted, what we attained from studies, into biomethane injection. But the big bulk and the big way to get there to the 5 terawatt hours is to install new biomethane production capacities in a sustainable way in feedstock management. And how we're going to do that, I'm going to give you insights now in the legislation we're currently working on. We are addressing this topic in the so-called Renewable Deployment Act, or in German called BECCU. It's should continue should have an inherent support mechanism for renewable gases, which I'm going to present you right afterwards a little bit more in detail. We are going to redesign national gas grid fees for the injection for biomethane, making it more cost efficient for producers. Also, we're addressing the issues of planning, so integrated grid infrastructure planning with the power and gas grid development, but also looking on the potentials for biological feedstocks for biomethane production. Yeah. Further, we are planning to introduce a service facility giving producers guidance for renewable gas production, and also giving them guidance for integrated feedstock concepts in a stable way. Yeah. Further, of course, the definitions have to be put in place, because there's currently no definition of what a renewable gas is, what biomethane is, what renewable hydrogen is. And no market of any renewable product can work if you don't have the right guarantees of origin, which we are also aiming to put in place according to REDS 2. The system should enter into force on 1st January 2021. There are indications that actually could take a little longer, but hopefully we're very soon in a plenary with that. What could be a support mechanism for renewable gas look like? So what we are planning to do is to give a quota for the gas suppliers. So starting in 2 to 3 years after the implementation of the law, because we want to increase the production side, there should be a quota enter into force with around 0.6% and have a yearly incremental increase until 5.6 in 2030. So we also want to have the possibility to raise the quota because it's always related to the share of the gross domestic consumption of gas. And this is also quite fluctuable, and gas consumption is prognosed also to decrease due to efficiency measures in Austria. If a supplier couldn't have the possibility to buy renewable gas from the producers, a compensatory payment is also possible. And where's this money then channeled? We want, and we also discussed it with the Commission, that it's possible due to environmental aid guidelines, can also introduce investment aid for the producers, but also but in order to keep the sustainability criteria and also to have the cascading use focus, we are linking that to feedstock regulation. So the focus on the waste streams in there is linked to the feedstock mix and also to the payments and also the time when the production plant is entering in production and joining the system, and also have to present our feedstock concepts and the concepts for the biogas manner afterwards. Further, we're going to address the definition of a system border means that the connection between the producer and the gas grid, it means that if the future biomethane plants are currently are going to produce in a sustainable way from a sustainable feedstock and are with enough capacities located in the vicinity of the gas grid, the connection from the gas grid to the power plants can be socialized via grid fees. And several other smaller accompanying measures to like incentivize production. I'll give you then a short overview. What is the outlook now for the biogas policies? As I now showed you what we're planning. The next things are, of course, the full RED II implementation, which is are important for sustainability criteria, especially also for the biogas and biomethane production. Most of them are going to be adopted in the Renewable Deployment Act I talked right now before, and hopefully that's going to enter into force in beginning of 2021. Further, we are working on more concrete measures on bioeconomy in the bioeconomy action plan, and also we are working on a hydrogen strategy, should be presented until end of the year, and this strategy also includes a mobilization strategy for renewable gases, because the overall target is to decarbonize the gas sector, no matter like what kind of renewable gas that is, and the question of addressing feedstock reuse and also to mobilizing feedstock use in a sustainable way for renewable gas production needs also to have like a strategic formulated approach. So thank you for your attention, and welcoming all the other questions with you.
Thank you very much. This was a very good view into what this means in practice in legislating in the member states. And seeing that the viewers haven't posed any questions, I will. And Asger and I are legislators, obviously, in the European Parliament. So I would like to ask the panel, whoever feels like this is something that they will want to answer, what you believe could be a game changer in legislation in this legislative period in the European Parliament. Mr. Marco just now presented a couple of key points where politics will have to work in. I mean, we're also opening up the Renewable Energies Directive as well. So this obviously will present a lot of potential. So it will be interesting to hear from you where you see the key changes in legislation in the coming years in order to really bring the topic of biowaste and biofuels to its full potential. And for a further question, I would like to bring in Asger, because he also wants to ask a question. So maybe we can bring these two questions together, and then I will give the floor to the panel. Asger, please.
Mm-hmm. Jeg spørger på dansk.
I will be asking my question in Danish. Thank you very much for some very good presentations. I have a few comments and a few questions. First of all, it is very clear that we need a waste strategy on a European level. but also how we will avoid microplastics in the recycling system. Additionally, we are also lacking a biogas strategy on a European level. And thirdly, if we want to reach the targets by 2050, we need large-scale projects with biogas plants so that we can exploit the residues that we have in our society. So the question for my part is, how fast can we exploit all bio-waste in society? How fast can we reach full production of bio-waste? And from an agricultural viewpoint, it would be very good if we could reduce our CO2 burden significantly by speeding up this process. But thank you for your very good presentations.
All right, I see lots of videos from the panel now opening up again. So whoever feels like this is their time to speak now, also on the questions that Asger has asked, from the waste strategy to avoiding microplastics and the biogas strategy, please feel free to start the debate. Who would like to start?
I'd like to start. That's fine. Thank you very much for your questions. I think that what Asger raised is really relevant for the future of biogas in Europe, and I think it's right that the European Union should formulate some a policy about these things, and I think that the main targets to look at is to find a way where you incentivize big scale professional biogas plants, and I think that if I could take the last question first, what Asger asked, I think if the right framework is in place for this. We have discussed this in the World Biogas Association. How quick could we actually build biogas plants to take care of all the biological waste in not only in Europe but also in the rest of the world? We think that if the right framework is in place, we could actually build these facilities in a 10-year framework, because we think that what we see is that the capital is available, and when we look at what we have to build, we also know we have a lot of the technology in place, so we could do that. And I think that you could look into some of the subsidy schemes that we have seen in Denmark, but also what we have in France. They are supportive to this, and it would be very nice if we could have a framework across the European memberships countries that were reliable and similar. That would be easier for companies like ours to actually invest in a number of countries. And I think what you should encourage is to not only give subsidies, but also make a framework where the investors are incentivized to actually lower the cost of producing, because that would encourage us to lower the need for subsidies over time. And I think that we could have the same development as we have seen in wind and solar, that the cost of producing biogas would be much lower than we know from today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking that maybe also for the question to avoiding microplastics, this could be a good opportunity for Almut Reichel to jump in. I believe that maybe she can provide some insight on this.
Okay, yes, thank you for giving me the floor. Well, we know that microplastics has a lot of different sources, and action is taken already at some levels, but well, there is a lot of additional work to be done in that area, and we need to make sure that we close the big sources. And this includes, for example, like the plastics that leaks into the environment via mismanagement of waste or losses of plastics. We still have to see how far the single-use plastics directive actually works. It's not yet implemented. And we need to monitor that. But there is also, well, we have some work ongoing on microplastics from textiles, which will come out next year, which is also resources. And so we still, our knowledge about where all that comes from is still a bit limited, but that should not keep us from already acting on those sources which we are aware of. One thing maybe to mention here is that we have now talked about the biogas potential, but we also should make sure that the quality of the digestate is good, because if we want to use that as a fertilizer or on land, we need to make sure that it is as free of plastics and other contaminants as possible. And well, you can like remove some of that during processing, but in the first place we have to make sure that it doesn't get into the biowaste in the first place. And that is very much like the steering that on the local level.
Yes, wonderful. I think the professor would also like to add something. I saw him already raising his hand.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to just follow up also on what Ole was saying in terms of subsidies. I think also that, as I mentioned before, this whole idea of a level playing field is more than just subsidies, and I think you have to create also a pull from the off-takers of the products that also incentivize developments at their end. So I think it is more than that. And I mean, you know, fundamentally speaking, I think you should put the cost of all of this where the cost should be, and that is on the fossil side. Rather than subsidize the green technologies. I think it's more right to say that we maybe tax or whatever on the CO2 side. In terms of the microplastics, if I can just add there as well, and so it's just not so. The debate here is so it centers around biogas, which is understandable. It's a great technology and it's really booming. But I think also one of the things that we should try not to in the implementation is to be extremely technology specific. I think it has to be on performance criteria and things. Microplastics is something that can be handled. So we, using other technologies, we can actually make sure that we have a pure stream of fertilizer that goes back to agriculture. But so it has to be an inclusive agenda rather than a.
I would, I guess, Mr. Marker would like to add something to this. How does it work in practice in a member state?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Gamon, and also I'm agreeing with most of the things which the previous speakers told us. But I see like it's a very good chance by like if they recast on the renewable energy directive, yeah, not only try to address like the production side, as my colleagues said also before, yeah, the question of efficiency, also of state aid efficiency, is maybe not only rightly addressed if you only see the production side, so that it should be also addressing in the demand side. Yeah, the question of the different sectors and use sectors, yeah, in order to get a pull of that. And the second question is, how do you want to have an increased efficient market and have like cost reality? Then also you should also address the question what the ETS can further do in the system, and also carbon pricing could also make your price realities between like fossil production and renewable production. Yeah, but always with there is a very difficult word to walk on that, how the sustainability criteria then for biomass are going to be applied, yeah, and how strict they're going to be. So I see there's a lot of possibility and possibly a lot of chances, which should be also come from a European perspective then, and give a European common approach, which then can the member states implement.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Peters, are you still there? Maybe we would like to also bring you in again into the debate.
Yes, hello. I'm still here. I really enjoyed the contributions. In terms of now translating some of that to policy, and you mentioned the Renewable Energy Directive. What I think is very important is that biogas, biomethane is viewed by policymakers in a positive light, that the benefits are being recognized. I see a lot of excitement on hydrogen at the moment, especially renewable hydrogen, for good reasons. I see that the Commission has allocated 1.4 billion euro over the past years on the fuel cell hydrogen joint undertaking, the Clean Hydrogen Alliance. So there's a lot going on. I think it would be really great if there could be something like a sustainable biomethane alliance, mirroring little ambition level that we see on the hydrogen side, with buy-in from the European Commission, from the European Parliament, with a clear and ambitious agenda on driving the scale-up of biomethane. And that will then have to be find its way into multiple kind of legislative files, the Renewable Energy Directive, Innovation Fund, other types of funding. But basically my point would be legislative arrangements are very important, but I think also political capital should be invested, and something like a sustainable biomethane alliance can really give can really cause some excitement and some more positivism into this what can be a very promising solutions. Thank you.
Okay, I will bring in a question from the audience, from the chats, and just read it out to you, saying that this is fine with household waste and biogas plants, but how do we convince the dairies also that they need to accept that the waste from biogas plants are spread on soil where grass is growing for milk cows? Who would like to get into that topic of bio-waste in practice? I live also on the countryside, so I have a lot of bio-waste in front of my door every day.
Yeah, I can perhaps comment a little bit upon this, because we have worked a lot with the Danish dairy company Arla about this, because they also in the past have had regulations on to what extent we could use digestate from biogas plants on the fields, the grass fields. But they have actually opened up for this and accept to do this. So I think that the biogas sector, we have to work with dairies around Europe. It's acceptable to do this. And we found a method in Denmark that where it's possible to do that. So I think it's doable. And if I can add a little bit more to the former discussion about, I think it's very important that you're looking at the organic waste that we have, to transform that into green hydrocarbons, because that's actually the important part. It's not biogas or the gas in itself that's important, because as also Lasse said, that you can transform the biogas to actually the transition from the waste part to green, have it in the right form to substitute all the black energy forms. Yeah. Thank you.
Does somebody else want to add something to this topic? Also, we're in the middle of the discussion, so feel free to add anything you would like to add. Yes, that's right.
Well, on the other hand, there is also currently work ongoing within the biodiversity strategy to develop a soil strategy. And I think, well, this is bringing back the fertilizers to the soil, and we need to make sure that they are of so good quality that they are accepted and that they are good for the soil. So I think we need some integration here between the policy on waste and on energy and climate and on biodiversity and soils. So like to make sure that we don't build up a big infrastructure on biogas and all that, and then we have no idea on where we can use the digestate.
Well, something that I was wondering about was also what about really interesting, innovative projects in practice from companies that are trying to build something in this regard. So I was wondering if any of you or all of you would like to share some success stories that they have heard from interesting companies that have really innovative approaches to this topic. Any of you? Mr. Marco, maybe you have heard something in Austria. Maybe you can share something from this topic in practice.
Of course, yeah, I would like to. Now, there's, for example, a very ambitious and a very innovative biogas or biomethane was former biogas power plant, but they were the first innovators then switching to biomethane injection to the gas grid. And they also like combined it into an integrated system. So there's not only now the injection of biomethane, but there's also here the connection to a public gas fuel station. And what they're planning to do, but it's actually not possible because also a question of CO2 prices, but in a kind of other way. They're trying also to deliver a greenhouses with the CO2 and algae production with the CO2. But actually the market price for CO2, for example, of Linde is too cheap to actually build a pipe there. So although the distance is only 300 meters to the next thing, so that's a question of the pricing, which could also like really kick in the innovation gradient, yeah, here.
Well, of course, we liberals like market-based solutions. Would anybody else like to provide something for this discussion? Mr. Peters, you haven't had that many chances to speak so far in this debate. Is there anything that you would like to tell us?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot going on in terms of scaling up the average project size. I think that is very significant in order to drive down costs. I think feedstock flexibility is crucial. And I think in that scaling up, the innovation is partly in being able to enlarge the sourcing circle at the 25%, the 25 kilometer that we heard that can be applicable in these large installations that Nature Energy, for example, creates. I think that's significant. I think for me also the innovative projects that I hope that will be built in the future, in the coming future, are these gasification plants. So there is a project in the Netherlands. It's a demonstration project on supercritical water gasification that allows you to be really flexible on the feedstocks that you can use. In terms of also high lignin, so more the woody feedstocks. is a project in which the Dutch gas infrastructure company GasUnie is involved with partners with promising initial results. So in scaling up the technology mix, so I think that would be, I hope, something that we'll see in the coming future. If you permit me, Ms. Gamon, I would like to add one point that is maybe unrelated to the specific question that you posed, but still would like to make the point more in general in terms of the geopolitical relevance of biomethane within the EU that I see. I think there is a sometimes difficult debate on the decarbonization where not all member states fully embrace net zero by 2050, where not all member states fully embrace an increased ambition level for 2030. And I think it's really helpful to look at what can be done in different member states. And I think biomethane, especially for countries like Poland and countries in Central Europe, can be a very promising way to help to decarbonize, but at the same time help to keep developing their rural economy. So that is just a point that I would like to raise here, where I think that biomethane, including from biowaste, can play a very important role. Thank you.
That's a very interesting point, actually, and I have to admit that I hadn't thought about this from that perspective. That it's obviously a huge potential for more rural areas. This is a very important point of discussion. Who would like to add something to that? I saw a hand raised from Mr. Monaco.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Peters, that you also bring up this topic, because the renewable gas production, local renewable gas production, is an essential question of energy security on a long run, and also the question of how to reduce energy imports. So we see that also, like in Austria, for an example, see that we are at 90% of our gas is currently being imported, but still 10% are from fossil production. All this fossil production possibly will going to be reduced, and otherwise, if you are not increasing other production schemes there for renewable gases, a complete dependence on imports will happen. And also this question of the EU. Of course, there are several studies which say that diversification also in the energy importing routes can happen and will possibly happen with the liquid renewable hydrogen market. But I think most of the people are not keeping in mind that there could be also a liquid renewable biomethane market for that, entering into the European energy market, and also they're diversifying energy security and energy supply, and also increasing energy security for this issue. So this geopolitical aspects is always to kept in mind next to the wealth in regional aspects.
Interesting point. Is there anybody else who would like to add something about the strategic importance also on biofuels and the use of biowaste, or what it can add? I mean, it's also interesting, but I hadn't seen any calculations on this, on what the potential for this could actually be in rural areas, and especially, as Mr. Peters has mentioned, in those areas that don't yet have this infrastructure on other renewable energy sources as maybe other countries have. Obviously, I guess we're talking about Poland, for example, and so on. Or would somebody like to get into this topic here? Or maybe, no? Yeah,
maybe a brief addition. So I think there's also an employment angle to that. So if we talk about rural development, we are talking about creating jobs that cannot be offshored or very hardly offshored. So we're talking about relatively stable European jobs that will stay within Europe. So if you look at, well, if you do an employment analysis, and we recently done one, you basically look at what is the employment benefit of every €1,000,000 that is invested in a certain sector. And we see that biomethane has a positive effect, but especially positive because it's rural, it's hard to offshore. So I think that's definitely also helping. If we link this not just to the geopolitical question, but also to COVID recovery, hopefully we'll ever have a COVID recovery fund. But if it happens, I think a share of the fund in order to scale up biomethane in rural areas as a way to also create durable employment and to help the energy transition and increase circularity. I think that would be a very wise thing to do.
I want to add to this. I fully agree with Dan Peters that there's definitely a local employment advantage by this with building biogas plants, even that they are big. And when I've said that, I think that the local perspective, I think that you should be a little bit careful about that, because it's important that that we build in industrial scale and we get the gas to a gas grid, because the gas should be transported to the areas where it gives the most value for the society. I think what should be local is, of course, the employment should be local, and these people, they should work with the logistic about getting the local feedstock in terms of biowaste into the biogas plants, and to get the digestate out on the local fields, so that the biogas plant will be you could say, an element in the local society in terms of treating the biowaste and recirculation. But I think the biomethane, we should make sure that it's available for the whole country, and not make that to be a local part, because you risk that you will use the biomethane a place where you could get paid better other places to transform it into liquids or whatever. So I think you should be very careful about that part to make that local. Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting observation. So before I would continue with the next topic, I would also like to ask Asger again if he has any more questions, because I believe we're going into the final phase of our event. So there was another question from the viewers of our live stream. Namely, will production of only biogas close the loop, or the composting phase would also be necessary? I'm really sure if I understand the question correctly, but if anybody would like to try and answer it.
Well, I can try again, because I'm a very, very, very big fan of biogas. And I think that you should be careful, and you should, of course, look at biogas. In biogas, we should be the most efficient way to transform the biowaste into value in terms of green hydrogen, carbon hydrogens, or transforming the biowaste to nutrients in terms of our digestate. Of course, if composting is more efficient from an economical point of view, you should do that. But I think that we are competitive in biogas to make the most efficient transformation.
Okay, I believe that Asger might have a final question for the round, if I understand that correctly.
Yes, I'm mute again. Tak for det.
Thank you very much. Again, the discussion is very good. I'm on quite a high from this discussion. We just have to convert it into politics at a European level. There is one thing that is very clear to me. The sorting strategy that we have of the sources in society, we really need to upgrade that. I think that Austria is the country in Europe that has the best sorting strategy, and I think that we have to deploy that at a European level. And as Ole mentioned, it is also very essential that the fertilizer that is recycled in agriculture, it has to be pure. And that is one part of it. The other side to it, as we've mentioned, is that the fertilizer that is recycled, it has to be more plant available. So by using the manure from, for instance, for animals, that makes it more accessible, and I think that needs to be incorporated in the biogas strategy. Thank you.
Okay, so we will do a quick final round. For anybody who would like to speak on this topic, please fire away. Or continue with a final statement if you like. Whatever you would like the public to hear now, before we end this debate, what you find to be most important. Who would like to start? I'm taking volunteers.
Well, I'll then. I'm tempted to do that now. So, no, I think it's important that that which Asger already have said that you should make a biomethane strategy in the European Union alongside with hydrogen and electrification, because I think that sometimes it tends to be each other's enemies, and I really don't see that. I think we could get synergies out of this, because I think we need both electrification and biomethane and hydrogen together, and I think actually they could it could help each other in a way in the future, both on power to X and all other sort of things. So please see this as a complement to each other, to all these three important technologies for greening our energy in the future. Thanks.
Okay, Professor Rosendal.
Yes, I'm pretty much in agreement with this, but again, I just want to stress a little bit that it doesn't become so technology specific that we shut out other promising technologies that also offer these benefits. I think the way to do this is really to be quite specific on what it is we want to achieve by implementing these technologies, what it is we, in terms of sustainability, in terms of, I don't know, jobs and so on and so forth. So we don't, paint ourselves into a corner. I am not suggesting that biogas or biomethane is a dead-end technology by any means. I'm just saying that there are also other pathways to achieve these things that offer other benefits that I still think to keep a rather open mind and then be quite specific on what it is we want to achieve by doing what we do. And also lots of synergies, by the way, between these different technologies, that some of the shortcomings that one technology has might be addressed by another technology, and linking those together and bridging to the power to X segment could be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I do strongly believe that we have to build frameworks that also work for technologies that we don't know yet about. So will be important in the future. Maybe we will take Mr. Mark next.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, perfect. I want to go on one point, addressing also the potentials coming from manure. So this is now the combination and integration of these topics in like how far is policy going to address behavioral changes, especially food consumption or meat consumption, and also on which regard the question of bioagriculture comes in, because of course free range free-range animals, and the collection of manner for free-range animals is not easily being integrated then in concepts for biomethane production. So you always should proceed as a holistic approach. And what is especially important is from the European side now to give more, I think, like more clear indication, how the renewable gas targets, or at least how the way for renewable gas should be pointed out in next year. So I think one of the panelists came up with the question of a European biomethane strategy, which would suit very well, because also in our discussions with financiers and banks, we see the comments that say now there are not many markets which are so good prognosticated in growth, as the renewable gas markets. And if you give them a clear signal, all the question and also the need for investments and also financial investments to these financial suppliers should be addressed, and should be also like encouraged to do that with clear signals and policies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peters. Would you like to add something for a final statement?
Yeah, thank you. So since 2009, we have the European Renewable Energy Directive, which has mainly been, in essence, a renewable electricity directive. I think it's very important that the full energy system will be decarbonized going forward. That means that an extra effort is needed to also create green molecules. So I think a binding mandate for renewable gas by 2030 should be part of a revision of the RED in 2021. I think that this will only be possible if there's a minimum degree of agreement among a wide range of stakeholders, including civil society, on the value, the societal value of biomethane, as well as its potential, its sustainable potential. I think a biomethane strategy can definitely help to create such alignment, but I think that's a huge task in order to avoid the discussion on biofuels, which basically resulted in stagnating investments and a big debate on sustainability. So learning lessons from the past, doing it right, so biogas done right, hopefully can lead to a mandating of renewable gases, including green hydrogen, in the Renewable Energy Directive. Thank you.
Biogas done right sounds like a good motto. Ms. Reichel, would you like to finish this round?
Yes, thank you. Well, looking from the waste side, I think we have to realize that there is this huge potential of that biowaste that currently goes to landfill, for example, or into incineration. And what I often hear from those countries who have not introduced separate collection of biowaste, they say, this does not work for us. We can't do this. But I think if we see this as something which has an opportunity also from the climate side, from gas production, then maybe the picture could change, and that it's not something only you have to do because there is the directive on waste, but it has a bigger impact. Then my second point would be to make sure that we get good quality of the outputs. And maybe a European-wide requirement to implement quality assurance systems for compost and digestate could help in order to build trust into organic fertilizers. Because I think that we have to take care of both the energy potential, let's say, but also the fertilizer potential with the quality aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to bring in Asger again for a closing statement. Asger, you have the floor.
Jeg vil bare sige tak til dig, Claudia.
I would just like to say thank you, Claudia, for hosting this fantastically inspiring seminar about biowaste. this incentivizes me to, politically speaking, that we have to work with our sorting of waste at the source, but also a biogas methane strategy. And we have to link it to the other renewable energy sources so that we gain the whole spectrum of how we can have a fossil-free society by 2050. And biogas is a valuable part of that. So thank you very much to the speakers, and thank you very much, Claudia. We have a lot of work to do now.
Thank you, Asger.
And thank you to the Danish interpreters as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Asger. Thanks a lot to the panel. Thanks to everybody who was watching the debate. I think this has really given us a good overview of the topic from all different perspectives that the speakers have provided. Definitely gave me a good look into the topic. So I hope we will be able to continue this debate at some other point. I believe that the topic will stay relevant for this entire legislative period of the European Parliament. So we'll surely get another chance. Thank you very much for participating and have a great evening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.